yesterday. Just so please reflect a bit on the motivation for your attending this talk. Bearing in mind the sort of fundamental recognition that all beings, including yourself, want to be free of suffering and live with peace, serenity, happiness, and a sense of living a meaningful life. And therefore, in order to do that, we need to learn about the ways to deal with our disordered emotions in a constructive way. We need to learn how to develop our minds so that we can attain this deep sense of mental well-being. And therefore, we've come to this class today in order to learn about the various techniques to transform our mind. Then, thinking more off into the future, then as we become more proficient in working with our mind, then we'll also be in a better position to help others do the same thing. And eventually, when we have totally subdued our mind, totally developed all of our good qualities, and then we'll be in the best position to help beings in the most profound way. Okay, so bearing that in mind then let us continue with the kind of meditation we were doing yesterday. So I know some of you might not have been here. That's okay. So we were doing a very basic meditation, but one that I was asserting is going to be a foundational practice for all of the various work we're going to do with our minds in the future. So it's called the Mindfulness of the Breath meditation. And yeah, let's just do. So get into a comfortable meditation position, sitting cross-legged, and make sure you're sitting upright in your seat. If you normally wear specs, you can take them off. And then there's a Tibetan saying that, the mind on the cushion, the body on the cushion and the mind in the body. So just taking a moment to center our awareness in our body, which is now in this present moment here on the meditation cushion sitting. So letting go of all thoughts of the future, memories of the past, and just hone in on this awareness that you're now sitting. Feeling the weight of your body on the cushion beneath you. And more generally, in your whole awareness of the body, all of the area. Just try to hone in on that, whatever sensations you might have. And then we do what's called a quick body scan. So starting from the head, just putting our attention sequentially at different areas of our body. First noticing what is there, and then if we notice there's any tension, trying to release and let go. So especially in the facial muscles, bringing your attention there, noticing if there's any subtle tension being held, a slight squinting of the eyes, a slight wrinkle in the brow, some tension around the lips and mouth, on the jaw. Allow yourself to soften all of those muscles. Then going through the rest of your body in the same way, stopping, noticing, being aware at each point in the body, seeing what's there, checking in, and then releasing tension where and when we find it. And we can use the out breaths as a way, just as we exhale, we're letting go of the breath. We can also think that we're breathing into the various parts of our body and releasing the tension along with our breath. So I'll do that for another few minutes. At your own pace. And then now, having settled into our meditation posture, we can shift our focus to the breath. So here, when we say the breath, we mean the sensations we find in the body as we breathe in and out. So one way to do this, you can ask yourself, how do you know you're breathing at this time? Where do you feel it manifest in the body? So whether it's the rising and falling of the abdomen, the expansion and contraction of the chest cavity, or perhaps even the feeling of the air as it passes over the skin in the nostril area. Just place your mind's attention on those sensations as you breathe in and out. And here, just work with the natural breath as it is. So very effortless, not trying to have a long breath or a short breath, but just allow your breath to take on its own natural rhythm, whatever that might be right now. And just watch an impartial observer. And as we did last night, we can also count the exhalations. So at the end of each exhalation, count 1, inhale, exhale, count 2, and so forth. When you reach 10, start over again at 1. And as you try to breathe, when other occurrences come to the mind, external like sounds or internal like different thoughts, then you can notice they arise, but not engage with them. Cutting through the conceptual chatter and commentary. But even if we find that our mind has wandered off, gently bring it back to the breath. Start over again, counting at 1. So we'll do this for 5 more minutes. So now I wanted to just introduce the next step of this type of meditation. So now you should have a little bit more calmness and stability in the mind. So now we're going to just loosen our attention, whereas before it was trying to be tightly focused on the breath. Now we're going to just be aware of whatever is most prevalent in our mind. So it could be that we have some physical sensations. Maybe by now you're feeling one of your legs falling asleep. Maybe you're feeling the coolness of the air because there's a ceiling fan over you. Maybe there's different thoughts going up. You'd be aware of those. Maybe there's some emotions coming up, some anxiety. Maybe there's a positive emotion. Just try to be aware of what's happening within your whole field of awareness and whatever is most prevalent. Just view it as an impartial observer, aware of what's going on, but no clinging to the present, no aversion to the unpleasant. And it could be that there's nothing. That's okay. If that's the case, then you can maintain just the awareness of the breathing. And then when other things arise, you're aware of that. If and when they pass away, then return to the breathing. So let's try this for a few more minutes. Okay, so gently come out of the meditation and bring your awareness back to your room. Okay. So we took the next step in the meditation. I know some of you came in a little bit after we started, but did you hear the instructions I was giving? Yes? Oh, okay. Well, that's why we recorded it. Okay. Anyway, just to recap and review. So we are doing a practice of mindfulness meditation, and the traditional way one proceeds, there's these four, we call it foundations, some call it close placements of mindfulness. So mindfulness is just to be aware, being aware of something. And we have different types of consciousnesses. We have our sense consciousnesses, we have our mental consciousness. And so the four foundations of mindfulness, the four objects we can take, is going to be the body and the sensations in our body. Then feelings, we have pleasant sensations, unpleasant sensations. Then we have the mind generally. So all the various, auditory consciousness, might be aware of a horn beeping outside. Then we also have all of our emotions, fear and other contents of the mind. And then lastly is phenomena. That we'll get to quite later. But we discussed last night. The main ones we're interested in is impermanence, right? So we can notice maybe in our own other types of consciousnesses, like if there's a throbbing or a pain in the leg, it abides for a while, and then maybe it gets bigger, maybe it gets stronger, more intense, maybe it goes away. So noticing that's also impermanence. Things aren't constant. Okay, so normally how we proceed is we go in that order, right? So the body first, and then to feelings and so forth. So yesterday, and even in this session, we start by getting into a meditation posture and then becoming aware of the whole range of our body, right? And then scan each part piece by piece, trying to identify. First, we just notice what's there. And then we try to see if there's any tension, and then relax. So one thing with this meditation, yes, we are trying to gain focus, clarity, but we're also, believe it or not, trying to get a sense of deep relaxation, right? Calmness. Yeah. Then we allow ourselves to relax each part of the body as we go through. And then from the whole body, we then put our attention just on the physical process of breathing. And so this is actually contained within the mindfulness of the body. Because as we were saying, as we breathe in, we might feel the abdomen expanding, we might feel the chest expanding and contracting, we might feel the air as it passes over the skin and the kind of upper lip and apertures of the nostrils. And then we watch, we observe. Yeah. Okay. They say that this meditation on the breath actually is very good for calming the discursive thoughts, discursive thought, the monkey mind, always, jumping one thing to another. And we often have thoughts about the future, We might be going through our to-do list, right? Oh, I forgot to do this. I have to send that. I have to do that. So all that planning, all that discursive thought, by bringing our awareness into the body and especially into the sensations that we're having in this present moment. See, all those sensations, it's only now, right? We can't feel something in the future. We can only feel what's happening now. And so as we connect with the sensations in the present moment, we're hopefully letting the other things kind of subside and drop off naturally. Okay. So we did that for a few minutes. And then, well, we can then sort of loosen. Okay. Now, I will say this, and you at home as well. In your daily practice, and by the way, please integrate this into your daily practice. Yeah. Even if it's just 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But if it is 5-10 minutes, you might still be dealing with all kinds of discursive thoughts and your mind is still racing. It's not getting to a point of calmness that this next step would be a good idea. Okay. So generally, when we were counting the breaths, right? We also said we would count the breaths. If you can get to say 31, right? So we go 1 to 10, start over at 1, right? So if you can get through 3 cycles of that with not letting our mind wander off, that's somewhat stability. Yeah. Then you can try this next step. But sometimes in the meditation, you might not get there. And that's okay too. That's okay. So then once there is some stability as a kind of foundation, then we sort of just loosen the tight focus on the breath and then allow ourselves to be, again, aware of the whole range of our experience. And here, what I was saying, there could be body experiences, right? My foot was falling asleep. That's why I mentioned it to you, right? So then you feel the tingling, the pins and needles. Okay, that's all right. Also, there's a fan right above my head, so I'm also feeling the coolness on the skin, right? Then different thoughts coming up. I was noticing some anxiety, right? Oh my gosh, what am I going to say for these next 3 hours? I'm so unprepared. They're not going to like me, and what we were saying yesterday, right? We have these initial thoughts, and then if we kind of let them snowball, as you will, yeah, snowball, yes, snowball, Dilshad, okay. Maybe some people on the Zoom call, they don't know this expression, right? But like a snowball at the top, right? As it rolls down the hill, it picks up more snow and it gets bigger and bigger. So our thoughts can be like that, right? So first there's a thought, a little bit unease, and then what am I going to say? They're not going to like me. Oh, I'm such a unprepared teacher. What am I doing here? I should just resign. I should just walk out. Whatever these things. Okay, it wasn't that bad, but you get my point. Okay. So here, then we just kind of observe even that process happening, right? Of course, the what we say, the first thought, that's going to come naturally. Then, as much as we can, we try not to engage. And we used this analogy yesterday of, rather than getting swept away by the river, and rather than trying to block the river, going up on the bank of the river and watching things go by. So even that feeling of anxiety, okay, we're aware of that, and have a sense. Okay, there's this feeling of anxiety. Okay. So in that way, then the object of our meditation is whatever's happening in the moment. Okay. So it's a very kind of free meditation. And the point, we started to talk about this yesterday, is we're trying to develop a kind of skill of the mind that we call non-judgmental awareness, where we're aware of what's going on in our psychophysical reality, but we don't get overwhelmed, right? Then even to know, okay, there's anxiety, but that's okay. And later, when you have maybe a lot more experience under your belt, then you'll see all sorts of things arise in the mind, and then they go away. So none of it is such a big deal, you know? It's like, okay, we don't have to be so afraid, right? There's a great teacher, Sokmi Rinpoche. He calls it, the beautiful monsters, right? And there's this, he calls it a handshake practice, and do a handshake to our beautiful monsters, right? So normally, we have these kind of uncomfortable emotions, and we don't like it, right? It's like the monster, so we run away from the monster. But I don't know if you saw the movie Shrek, right? Shrek, okay, kind of same thing, right? This is ogre, sorry, yeah. And a lot of people, they're afraid, right? So they run away at first sight. But if you're willing to kind of get to know the ogre, you might see some different side of it, or at least then not be so afraid that you have to run away, because even ogres, they're not trying to always harm, right? It's not so bad. It might actually be telling us something, right? So like that. Okay. So maybe more on this later. Those on the Zoom, hi. Any questions at this point on this next step in the meditation? Okay. All right. So we're trying to combine. Yes. We have, so sorry, for the people at home, we have a pillar, and then I looked to one side, I saw like an arm, but the rest of it was obscured by the pillar. So I like to see the people in the audience. What's that? I like to see the people in the audience to know, this is part of my anxiety, like, are people falling asleep? Are they playing with their phones? Are they bored out of their minds? Are they not understanding what I'm saying? So sometimes you can see that in the audience, right? Everyone on the Zoom call has their camera off, on the other hand. So I don't know what they're doing. Oh, wow. I can, thank you, but it's not necessary. But yeah, thank you. 3 people are at least listening because they turn their cameras on. I'm joking. 4, yes. Okay. UA Wildcats, is that University of Arizona? Okay, yeah, oh, nice. Okay. All right. So anyway, enough fun and games, enough joking around, Namjong. How do I deal with my anxiety? We have a question in the chat. Well, so there's a few things, right? What we were saying yesterday, and I'm going to get into this more, right? What we were saying yesterday, we have general strategies that are going to apply toward all of the kind of afflictions that come up. And then we have specific ones that, like there might be things just for anger that we wouldn't necessarily do to deal with attachment, right? And so forth. So with anxiety, okay, then there's the kind of general way, right? And the general way is one, just like we were doing, being aware, right? But not pushing away, right? Not having aversion to the unpleasant, nor clinging to the pleasant, right? And so even noticing the anxiety, it's like, okay, it's there. Not so bad. Not so bad. Now, that's in the meditation, right? More generally speaking, then sometimes with fear, we're thinking about things that might happen, right, in the future. Okay. So, well, one thing, and we're gonna get to this later, but since the question came now, I'll mention it now. We have to kind of analyze, even though we have this thought, right? Then to think, okay, is this grounded in reality, right? Because many of the fears we have, they are not, they're possibilities about what might happen in the future, but they're not extremely likely, right? In fact, sometimes they're very unlikely. But it kind of takes on a life of its own, and we have a sort of irrational fear about it. So that's one thing to check, to analyze. Yeah. Then another thing is, okay, maybe there is a kind of reasonable thing at the bottom of that anxiety, right? So I get this a lot. Exam preparation, right? Is really bad. But instead of just freaking out about it, then to try to become like action oriented, right? Okay, well, you have all this, whatever, 300 pages, 500 pages in your textbook that you have an exam on. Okay, well, being kind of fearful about it isn't going to help. But instead, well, break it up into small things. And okay, you have 3 months before the exam, 600 pages. Okay, 10 pages a day, 20 pages a day. That's okay. Break it into kind of manageable chunks. And then, yeah, you gradually can deal with the underlying problem. So anyway, those are a few things. How's that? Okay. All right. So let us, I wanted to continue now with the presentation that we started yesterday. And, oops. Okay, where were we? Oh, yes. Okay. So just to give you all a, little agenda for today. So we have, let's see, 2 hours and 10 minutes left. But one of the advantages of coming in person to Choe Ling Center is we typically have snacks. Are we having snacks today? All right, so that's going to come in what, about an hour? Okay, maybe 45 minutes, something like that. Yeah. So those of you on Zoom, sorry, but hopefully you have some kind of food or drink at your place, and we can kind of virtually have a snack time together. So we're going to go for about 45 minutes, and then take a break, and then come together again until our time is up. So I do have a presentation that is basically following the, there's a typo here. It's not the karma section. It's the afflictions section in the Lamrim Chenmo. And I wanted to go through that and then leave, hopefully, a lot of time for your questions. And in this presentation, I'm going to be giving a more general overview of the afflictions and the way to deal with it. But then hopefully we can get some participation from you. And if there's particular problems or questions you have, we can dive into those more. Okay? All right. So we just got to this part yesterday where we were putting this section on the disturbing emotions in the overall context of the Lamrim. And we were saying, where does it fall? It falls in, okay, we had 3 scopes or 3 types of spiritual practitioner who each have different goals for their practice. We have the small scope practitioner who is interested in getting a good rebirth in the next life. That's their main goal of their practice. Then more than that, we have the middle capability practitioner that wants to be free from all of samsara. And so samsara, just to review, is this concept of cyclic existence where we take uncontrolled rebirth due to our karma and these afflictive emotions, right? And in particular, well, one, it's because we have craving and grasping that come up toward our time of death. We see that we're going to cease to be, and we have a kind of, freak out. Oh. And then that craving and grasping to our own existence activates a previous karma that then projects us into our next rebirth. Okay. So, to be free from that, we need to be free from the afflictions. So this middle capable being, they want to be free from samsara, therefore they want to be free from the afflictions. And therefore it's in this section of the text that the afflictions are talked about. So therefore we have this reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of its origin. Then we have how the afflictions arise, identifying the afflictions, the order in which the afflictions arise, the causes of the afflictions, and the faults of the afflictions. Okay. So, identifying the afflictions. So this term afflictions in Tibetan, nyomo, and in badly pronounced Sanskrit, klesha. Yes? Okay. But now when you see it translated into English, in the title of this talk, or this weekend series, we said disturbing emotions, but you also find afflictive emotions. You'll sometimes see afflictions. Sometimes you'll see defilements. So you'll see different terminology. So I always recommend to people to at least have a little knowledge of the Tibetan and Sanskrit terms. So then, since the English terms can be translated differently by different translators, then to know, oh, defilements, oh, he's talking about nyomo. Okay. Then you can kind of know what's going on when you read different translations. Okay. So here, the term afflictions is used by the translation committee of the Lamrim Chenmo. So here, it says an affliction is defined as a phenomena that when it arises, is disturbing in character, and that, through arising, disturbs the mind stream. Okay? So sometimes, it's interesting, in these philosophical texts, the definitions that are given is almost like, okay, that's not very insightful at first glance. But then, if you think a bit more, right? Okay, disturbing the mind stream, right? We have to find a kind of the common thread throughout all the afflictions, right? We have anger, we have attachment, we have pride, we have jealousy, right? So all of these things, then it's like, okay, they seem on one side to operate in a quite different way. It's okay, right? Anger versus attachment. But at the base of it, then hopefully we notice this in meditation, even something like attachment, we think, oh, it's nice. It gives a kind of nice feeling. But at the base of it, when we really look in, there's some disturbance of the mind, right? There's actually that feeling, the unmet need of that item that we crave. And then as long as we don't have it, the mind is a bit unsettled, right? Okay. Oops. So then, of the afflictions, then there are, again, different presentations, right? So at the root of it, you'll hear often of the 3 poisons, right? Then you'll hear of the 5 poisons. You'll hear of the 6 root afflictions. You'll hear of the 10 root afflictions, okay? So here in this presentation, there's a presentation of the 10 afflictions. Okay, so we're going to go through those. There's attachment, hostility, pride, ignorance, doubt. Okay. Maybe it's good to talk about that a bit more. So attachment, right? This is the craving. We see an object. We want the object. And then the mind, as we were saying, as long as that craving is not met, it's disturbed. And it's hard to get our mind off of it, right? Hostility, also sometimes translated as anger, right, is a wish to sort of harm something outside, or yeah, you can even be in the Lamrim channel. It even says we can have hostility towards rocks, right? So I don't know. Maybe sometimes we're walking down the street and we stub our toe on a rock. We look down on the pavement. Okay. Then pride. Basically, we have an inflated view of ourselves, right? And this can take, many forms, many ways we can be prideful. Yeah. Then ignorance. So here, there's different types of ignorance, but mostly when we talk about ignorance, we can have ignorance about the conventional reality and then ultimate reality. So sorry. Let me get back to that one later. Then doubt in this case, right? We have to distinguish. This is afflictive doubt, and in this context, the things that actually exist, like liberation, like the Buddha, enlightenment, and in this context also past and future lives, the law of karma, cause and effect. It's to have a sort of mind that doubts their existence. Oftentimes, especially, we hear that analysis is good, not to just trust what the Buddha says and have blind faith. So it is not saying that we should then swallow everything whole and not check, not analyze. But when we have there's also three kinds of doubt. They call it doubt that tends toward the fact, right? So this could be, I'm not really sure if past and future lives exist, but given all the arguments I've heard, I think they exist, right? So there's still some doubt. It's not settled, but you have a what we call doubt tending toward the fact, right? Then there's the equal doubt. I don't know if they exist or not. Yeah, I'm totally kind of agnostic on the matter. And then there's the doubt tending away from the fact. So to think, I'm not sure if they exist or not, but probably they don't, right? So to have a kind of, inquisitive mind, analytic mind that is analyzing, listening, and open to the arguments, that's very good, and we should do that. Actually, some of these concepts that we're dealing with is very hard to gain certainty that comes with realization, right? I mean, we'd have to have some level of clairvoyance to actually remember our past lives, right? So before that happens, then we'll always be in this kind of not really sure, but probably, and that's okay. So that is not afflictive doubt, right? So then, these next ones require a lot of explanation as well. So the next one is the redefining view of the perishing aggregates. Okay. So a lot to unpack there. Okay, so now aggregates. Okay, the skandha. This is a term that you'll come across again and again within the Buddhist literature. And this was actually in the ancient kind of Indian philosophical tradition, where they talked about these five skandha, where it's the form, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and zu, sorwa, duche, mabashava, consciousness. Okay, and basically, those are the psychophysical constituents of the person. Okay, what's that? Yeah, so psycho meaning the mind, physical, the body. So those are kind of the components of the body. Okay, so that's the aggregates. Now, perishing means, right, disintegrating, changing, right, not constant. All right, so in general, redefining means to sort of solidify and superimpose a mode of existence that's above and beyond what's actually there. Okay, so now what does that mean when we put the whole phrase together? We have the person, right? You exist, I exist. Okay, we're not disputing that. But how does the person exist? The person is merely labeled, merely designated on the basis of my body and mind. Okay? But to hold anything more than that, something solid, something permanent, something above and beyond, just this merely labeled, that sometimes they say the mere I, right? So yes, I'm sitting here on this cushion. Why? Because my body's on the cushion. That's it, right? Anything more than that, any kind of essential nature, and especially anything apart from my body and mind, above and beyond, that is a kind of essential need. That actually, although we might search for it, we're not going to be able to find. But we have a kind of innate sense that there is an independent owner of our body and mind. A very nice example that I like to share from Dharmakirti's Pramanavartika, a text on logic and epistemology. He gives this thought experiment, right? Where someone comes to you and says, okay, I have a deal for you. We can trade your body with the body of a deva, a god or goddess, okay? Or I don't know, whoever you like, yeah? And then we'll trade your mind with Manjushri. Manjushri is the Buddha of wisdom. Yeah, it's right there. Manjushri is the Buddha of wisdom, right? So, it's free. Okay. Would you make the trade? Okay. So, those of you at home also, just think. Would you? Huh? Yeah. Yeah. Me too. Man, you trade my mind, this diluted mind, you know, that has anxiety. Then Manjushri's omniscient wisdom, you know, completely abandon all the obscurations and all the faults of the mind. Yes. Okay. Of course. Now, the fact that that trade is intelligible, even, that we can think about it, shows that, like, just for example, okay, I don't know, I'm using a proper. So I have a plate, yeah? Well, it's a pretty nice plate, glass plate. But, you know, someone else comes and they say, okay, I want to trade plates with you, right? Okay, so we have this concept. There's the owner of a plate. There's another plate out there. And the two owners are exchanging their goods, their property, right? Okay. So that's what has to happen if there is a trade going to happen, right? So now when we put this with the trade for our body and mind, the fact that that's intelligible means we have an innate feeling that there is an owner of our body and mind that then is going to say, okay, here's my body. Give me, I don't know, Brad Pitt's body. And here's my mind. Give me Manjushu's mind. Hmm? Think about that. So that one, actually, that one doesn't exist, and that is the Redefining view of the perishing aggregates. Okay. And then anyway, these next ones, they are okay. They get into quite beyond the scope of everyday use for most of us. Extremist views, you know, these are coming when one engages or one might receive teachings in other philosophical systems that then, you know, have what we call intellectually acquired wrong views. Okay, so I've found in my experience that to really delve into this, it causes more confusion because See you. Because, you know, if you've not studied these tenets before, then like for me to give a 5-minute kind of overview of them, it's just going to cause more confusion. So let's skip over those next 3. And then the last one, the wrong view, is, remember in 5 we had doubt. Okay, so 10 is the full-fledged form of that, saying they don't exist whatsoever. And although there's many different kinds of wrong views, these ones are especially associated with, you know, the denial of the Four Noble Truths, liberation, enlightenment, you know, past and future lives. And so why are those particularly singled out? Well, if you have the sort of denying those things, then our impetus to practice Dharma becomes severely curtailed, right? You know, if karma doesn't exist, right? In other words, if our experiences in the future of happiness or suffering are not the kind of effect of our virtue and non-virtue, then why practice virtue? Why give up non-virtue, right? If enlightenment doesn't exist, then you know, what are we doing here? If liberation doesn't exist, you know, then we might as well just you know, eat, drink, and be merry, as they say, right? So, you know, I'm going to quote, you know, Dostoevsky, the great Russian author, you know, in the Brothers Karamazov. He says something like, and please correct my translation, but he said something like, you know, without God, then anything is possible, or anything is permitted, right? So it's a similar kind of thought. Anything is permitted, right? Because in the Christian concept, right, God is the sort of, you know, figurehead that then, you know, is up there with a clipboard and tallying our sins and all good stuff, right? So if that kind of overseer of the whole universe is then gone, then kind of same thing. Just then eat, drink, and be merry. So like that. Oops. Okay. So now the order in which the afflictions arise. So this is another quotation from Dhammakirti. Once there is a self, there is an idea of an other. On behalf of self and other, there is attachment and hostility. All of the faults come about in association with these. Okay. So in the traditional literature, they say there are 84,000 afflictions, actually. Okay. 84,000. But don't worry, to break that down, there is a way, right? So, oh, sorry, I mentioned before, the 3 poisons is the attachment, hostility, and ignorance. Okay. Yeah. When they put it to the 5 afflictions, so let's just go back. The 5 afflictions then will include the ignorance and doubt. And then sometimes when they talk about the 6 root afflictions, they then talk about the 5 views and the 5 non-views. So here in this list of 10, right, 6 through 10 are views, right? The redefined view of the perishing aggregate, an extremist view, belief in supremacy of wrong views. So those 5 are the 5 kind of views, and then the first 5 are non-views. Okay, means kind of philosophical positions. Yeah. Okay. So then when we have 84,000 afflictions, how does that work? Okay, Well, there's 21,000 associated with hostility or anger, 21,000 associated with attachment, 21,000 associated with ignorance, and 21,000 associated with a combination of the three. Okay? But of those, you see, this is what Dharmakrithi, right? We have the idea of the self first. So the ignorant mind that grasps on to the reified view of the I. Actually, in some of the tenet systems, you know, that perishing view of, the reifying view of the perishing aggregates, some systems equate that with ignorance. Okay. Others hold that ignorance will be more like the analogy given is darkness, right? As the sun sets, it becomes nightfall, then things become more difficult to see. And then one can imagine there is a coiled rope in the, I don't know, on the street or in your yard, and then you mistakenly think that that rope is a snake. Okay, so the wrong view is to hold the rope as a snake. The darkness is what caused you to have that mistaken appearance. Okay, so some systems they separate ignorance as the kind of darkness that then allows us to have the reifying view of the aggregates. Others they equate ignorance with that. Okay. In any case, here Dharmakirti actually is the one that equates the ignorance with that false view of the self. So then, once we have this reified self, this solid, tangible, independent self, then we have other, right? Self, other. They are kind of mutually interdependent, right? Then, on behalf of self and other, there's attachment and hostility. What that means is then the things that we see helping the self, right? Mostly giving ourselves pleasure, right? We have attachment towards. The things that are harming the self or doing things that the self doesn't like, then we have hostility. And then all the other faults come about in association with these. Then, you know, pride, for example, we have this sense, of me, and we want to, feel good about ourselves. So we look down on others, all this kind of stuff. Okay. Yeah, what I think it's good to say now, then you see why in the Buddhist system, there's so much attention given to selflessness, or later in the higher kind of tenet systems that talk about emptiness, right? It's because, see, by getting rid of the false view of the self, then the other afflictions also are eliminated. Okay. So now we have the causes of the afflictions. Let me go through these, and then we'll have snack time. Okay. So there's a great Indian master, Asanga, and he wrote a text called the Bodhisattva Levels, and he talks about 6 causes of the afflictions. So the basis refers to the latent proclivity for afflictions. So what does that mean? Latent proclivity, it's like we talk about the imprints in the mind, right? Or the seeds in the mind. Now, just like a seed will ripen into a sprout and then grow into a tree and then produce fruit and then have more seeds and so forth, right? Every time we have an arisal of an affliction, then it leaves an imprint in our mind. to then create a similar kind of affliction in the future. So to actually abandon the afflictions means to attain nirvana. One has to abandon not only that the afflictions don't arise manifestly, right? So you understand? A manifest affliction is one that's there in the now, right? So right now, I'm not angry, right? But within my mental continua, I have many imprints of anger. And if I meet with certain causes and conditions, there's a chance that I could become angry in the future, right? So to attain liberation, it's not just to kind of not have the afflictions arise in a manifest way or not arise in a manifest way, but also to abandon their seeds, okay? So then, object. The object refers to the appearance of objects conducive to the arising of an affliction. So, yeah, this you know, right? If you have attachment to food, right? Then when you see the food, when you think about the food, you know, your mouth starts to water. Yeah, you develop attachment in that way, which is okay. We'll talk about the ways to kind of deal with these later. But that's one of the reasons why, you know, the monasteries, they're out of the city, away from the hustle and bustle, right? Kind of in a quiet space, without many of the objects that will excite the senses. 3, the social context, and this refers to bad friends and foolish people. So this, yeah, maybe you can think about this in your own life. I remember when I was in in university, I don't want to say they're bad friends, but you know, we're young and kind of silly and stupid. And looking back, so many things, you know, we do because we thought it was funny, and we get into all sorts of kind of trouble. So then, yeah, our environment, our social context, the people we hang out with, they definitely influence us. Explanation. This refers to listening to wrong teachings. So, yeah. I think a quotation, Oscar Wilde, you know, he wrote the picture of Dorian Gray, portrait of Dorian Gray, something like this. In it, he says, the only way to deal with, what is it? Desire is to give into it? Something like that. Yeah? Something like that, more or less, right? So there can be this thought like, oh, yeah, don't deny yourself, right? You know, if you have a desire, just give into it, you know? Or if you have anger, right? You have to express it, you know, be true to yourself. You know, you hear these kind of things in you know, popular media and so forth, right? So here we have to be discriminating as to what we consume. Then habituation refers to the process of becoming accustomed to past afflictions. So this is kind of related to our the latent proclivity for afflictions. So as you know, with habituation, the more we do something, then the easier it is to do it in the future, right? Become habituated. And then attention refers to the incorrect attention that projects pleasantness onto what has an unpleasant character, conceives an impermanent thing to be permanent, and the like, right? So here it talks about especially these 4 distortions the four distortions that is related to the truth of suffering. So this is the mistake when considering things that are actually impermanent, painful, impure, and lacking a self to be permanent, pleasant, pure, and possessed of a self. So more on that later. But in any case, oftentimes, probably all the time actually, when we have these afflictions, then we're engaging in the object in a distorted manner. So typically, when we have anger, we view the object of our anger as being, 100% bad. We think what they've done to us is the greatest injustice that's ever happened, right? And on the flip side, our object of attachment, we think, oh, I can never live without, I can never live without you, or I have to have whatever, right? Whatever object it is, people lining up, spending overnight in the US when the new iPhone comes out. It's like the store is going to open at 9 a.m. They're there like 12 hours ahead so they can be first in line and make sure they get the latest one. These kinds of things. Oh, okay. So anyway, that's the cause of the afflictions. And yeah, shall we have a little break? Yes? Okay. How many minutes? I have to ask my boss. 15 minutes? 15 minutes break? Okay, great. So have a snack, have a drink, do whatever you want. Well, not whatever you want, you know what I mean. Okay. And thank you very much. We'll be back in 15 minutes.